Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow orders to spite someone. And in this episode, guys, Karens are getting taught lessons yet again. Guys, a Karen calls the cops on OP when she basically destroys her own car. That's how ridiculous this episode is. I hope you guys enjoy the super satisfying stories today, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. So I work at a pizza place that opened up last year in November, and just yesterday I had this happen. So all this week, we've had a deal going on online where you get half off all the pizzas you order. We weren't very busy last night, so I was about to get off 3 hours early, but decided to serve one last customer who came in after I collected my tips, but before I actually clocked out. A little side note, my manager was behind me at the cut table, cutting up the last 4 pizzas for this order. So I see the woman and I greet her saying, "Hello, are you here to pick up?" The woman says, "Yes, I am. I ordered online." To which I reply, "Okay, what was the name on the order?" The woman says her name's Karen. Not her real name, but you know how it goes. I then give her the total price of the order and ask her, "Would you be paying with cash or card?" And that's when Karen says, "What? Why is it so much? I thought everything was half off." I tell her, "I'm sorry, ma'am, it's only pizzas that are half off." We go back and forth some, with her trying to get the price lower, but eventually she demands, "Then give me the employee discount." Hearing her say that, I can't help but laugh, as I know this would make the order cost even more. I say to her, "Okay, but I'll have to take off all the other discounts to put it on." At that, Karen smiles, as though she just won a prize and says, "Go ahead, take them off. Do whatever you can to give me the discount." So with that, I take the discount for her ordering online off, and I give her my own discount. And I say to her, "That'll be," and then proceed to read out an even more expensive price, and say to her, "Would you be paying with cash or card?" And that's when she loses it and says, "What? Why is it even more expensive? Get me your manager right now." My manager finishes the last pizza and comes around the heating rack and says, "I am the manager, and I've been listening to everything that's been said." Suffice it to say, the woman ended up paying the higher price. Guys, I am actually shocked that she paid the more expensive price at all. Like, with reading all these crazy Karen stories, I was really expecting her to either storm out Pizza List or attack OP and then call the cops. But with that said, if she ordered online, she should have at least seen the price, right? Or am I just trying to give her a little too much credit? With that said, love it though, her demanding the employee discount was entitled enough, and ending up paying more was the satisfying a-hole tax that she deserved for even asking. So this is a tale from about 10 years ago, so obviously the conversations are to best of memory. Anywho, like most public places, our library had a lost and found box. It was located under the desk, and people could come up and ask, "Did you find so-and-so item?" You know how that works. But as time marches on, we get a new boss, who we'll call Karen. Karen did not like our lost and found setup. Instead, things had to go on a shelf behind the desk so everyone could see everything, and maybe remember that they lost a particular item. Now, this policy lasted maybe a week before we noticed a big problem. As public places tend to do, we attracted our fair share of idiots and a-holes, including someone who we'll call Jim. So Jim comes in one morning, and upon seeing this new shelf of treasures, he immediately claims that everything on the shelf is his. That glittery pink onesie was his. That well-used pacifier was also his. And that one odd glove that had been sitting in the box for months was also his. Now, of course, we knew damn well that it wasn't his, and we said so. And every single time, Karen would override us saying, "If he says it's his, then it's his. Give it to him. Besides, he's clearing out this stuff, so who cares? Nobody cares about lost and found stuff anyways." Until the almost final straw. One of our regulars was a mom and her kid, toddler age. The kid could walk, but he had a stroller just in case. The kid was usually well behaved and always had Mr. Giraffe with him. And one day, Mr. Giraffe somehow got left behind. We immediately called the mom, and they hadn't even made it home yet, and kiddo's having a complete meltdown. She says she's turning the car around and they should arrive in about 20 minutes. No worries, we'll take good care of him. We showed Kiddo a picture of Mr. Giraffe checking out a book and then sitting and reading it. disaster averted. Or so we thought. That's when Karen finds out, and Karen decrees that Mr. Giraffe be placed on the shelf with everything else, just in time for a-hole Jim to spot it and declare that it's his. Basically, the entire building staff is yelling that it's not his. The mom's on her way to get it, etc., but Karen will not be moved. She just hands it over anyways because, quote, he says it's his, so it's his. Sure enough, Mom comes and no Mr. Giraffe, but we know where he is. Someone gets Karen out of her office, and as a group, we head straight for Jim. We demand he return the giraffe, and of course, the guy has no clue what we're talking about. A strange thing about kids sometimes is they see closer to the ground. And sure enough, Mr. Giraffe is poking out of Jim's backpack. The kiddo grabs it with a shout of joy, and all Karen can do is stammer, but he said it was his, while the rest of us were saying, we told you it wasn't. Now you would think we're done, but we haven't even gotten to the malicious compliance yet. So get the malicious compliance ready. So shortly after the giraffe incident, Karen and Jim are still playing their games. Jim's still grabbing anything off the lost and found shelf he can see, and Karen's still letting him. Until one day, Karen heads to a conference and she leaves behind a very distinctive, very expensive water bottle / tumbler. And you can see this next part coming. Jim immediately claims that that water bottle is his, and I swear he was almost hopping with glee at his latest find. So with that, we give it to Jim, knowing that it's Karen's because, quote, if he says it's his, then it's his. A week later, Karen returns, only to find that Jim has her expensive water bottle. She tries to confront him, but he says, but all I have to do is say that it's mine and they give it to me. That's the rule. So after that, we finally got our box beneath the desk that afternoon, and Jim had to describe anything that he was going to try to make a claim on. After the box went back under the desk, it took a while to break Jim's habit. Every single day, the guy would come up to us asking, anybody turn anything in? And the answer was always no, or sure, what did you lose? What does it look like? It took a while, but he finally quit asking. Yeah, so I don't understand why Jim was so excited to claim that random stuff, guys. Like, he's gotta be a hoarder or something. Because honestly, I don't think used pacifiers, single gloves, and giraffe stuffies can be sold for much, if anything at all. Like, a lot of that stuff only has worth to the rightful owner. With that said though, I hope Karen learned her lesson. Like, I don't know how someone could see a freaking lost and found shelf as a great idea. So for a little context, this story is not mine. This happened to my father in the 80s and 90s, but I'll write in the first person because English is hard. In the 80s, I lost everything I could. I dropped out of college, my father died of a heart attack, and my mom was somewhere in the wind. I wasn't worth the air I was breathing. As a last effort, I saved up some money to move to a different state, so I could start fresh. I chose Montana to be my new home. Because I didn't have a college degree, I knew I could only make a living with my hands and not my head. So after a bit of looking around, I found work on a ranch. The owner of the ranch, who, let's call him Jack, took me under his wing. He taught me how to ride a horse, how to herd, how to do cutting, roping, and many other useful skills on a ranch. My goal was to have enough money for a deposit so I could buy a house, or at least some land. After about 3 years, I had the money, but I loved the ranch and the folks so much that I chose to stay longer. In the spring of '88, I finally made my decision to quit. I was fully honest with Jack about what my intentions were. I told him that I wanted to buy some land to have a ranch of my own, and potentially get married and start a family. Being the absolute champ Jack was, he offered me some contacts of people who were selling land. After some time, I chose a piece of land near Jack's ranch. I got a loan, bought the land, and in the summer, I started building my house. By the winter, the house was done, and it was planned in the spring that I'll build a barn, some fences, corrals, among others. In the spring, it was back to work, and before summer started, I had nothing to do. I had a lot of time on my hands while I was waiting for the paperwork to be done, and I wasn't gonna spend 2 weeks sitting on my porch doing nothing when Jack promised me that if I would ever need it, he would give me a job. Now, I didn't need a job because of money, I just didn't have anything to do. So I went to my good old friend Jack and asked if he needed some help. He said that he could use me to guide some people on the tours he was offering. I happily accepted the job, despite me not liking people, but still. It was better than just sitting on my front porch doing nothing. The first few days went without a problem, but then a wild Karen appeared to brighten up the day. I was just returning from a tour when I saw the Karen in the middle of a field yelling at this girl who was also a guide. Now, I didn't know the girl, but in my books, whoever makes a girl cry is an a-hole. So I come over to them, and in my most passive-aggressive voice, I say, "Good day, what seems to be the problem?" And just like that, Karen's wrath was now aimed at me. Karen yells back, "This bitch has no respect for the desires of a customer. Give me a manager now." Now, I didn't expect such strong wording, but I kept my cool, despite my hot-headedness. And I came up to the girl who's now sobbing because this Karen was mouthing off to her pretty good. I say to her, "Leave her to me, I'll take care of her. You just go take a break. Tell Jack that I'll be with this piece of work." And with that, she gives me a grateful smile and she nods and rides away. I go to Karen and say, "Ma'am, I can't get you the manager as he's pretty busy right now. But if you want, I can be your guide instead of her for the remainder of the tour." Karen replies very politely by saying, "Sure, I think even the trees will be better than that bitch." Hearing that, every part of my hot-headed self wants me to pretty much bury this woman right then and there. But I keep my cool, and we head off to the tour. And within the first minute, I see what a piece of work she truly is. Karen behaves like she knows best, and everyone is lesser than her, and everything should be given to her. When we're about to turn around and go back, I give her a choice. I say to her that we could either go the official route, or we could return by the unofficial route, which is shorter, but there were bear sightings reported in the past few days. I tell her that the unofficial route is quite dangerous, but just as I wanted her to do so, she vehemently objects because, quote, "She's the wisest person alive and she knows the best." And I'm thinking, great, my trap had worked. So after about 5 miles on the unofficial route, she starts screaming and she turns so pale that she's even more white than paper. In the distance, there's a grizzly. I knew about the danger I dragged both of us into, but in the end, it was technically her choice to go that route. I tell her to make herself as big and as loud as she can. I follow suit, but the bear keeps getting closer. It keeps growling at us. With every growl, Karen was getting even more pale. After it gets way too dangerous, I shoot a round out of my rifle and the bear gets scared and turns and runs away to the woods. The entire ride back, she keeps yelling at me that I intentionally put her in so much danger. And yes, I'll admit that it was quite reckless taking a visitor to that part of the woods where there were bear sightings reported, but technically she made the decision to go that route. I stay silent the entire ride because I can't keep a straight face. I was laughing maniacally in my head. I knew that if I looked at her, I would start laughing out loud. When we returned, she was shaking violently and she was pale as ever. After I tied up her horse, she demands that I get the manager, and I gladly point her to the little building in the distance, and she storms off. She then starts yelling at Jack, and I can see that Jack was trying his hardest to not break out laughing. I could hear that she was demanding that I be fired, but the neat part was I wasn't an employee of Jack's. I was doing it as a favor for a friend, and thus I couldn't be fired. After Karen's tirade ends, Jack comes up to me laughing like a kid. He then asked me, "How did you even come up with that?" I start giggling as well, and then answer, "Well, she made a girl cry, so I wanted to give her special treatment. I heard of the bear sightings, and it worked out well in my favor." He then asked me to not do that again, as it was reckless, and I agree. I tell Jack I don't plan on doing it again, but I had a plan if the bear mauled the damn wretch. My defense would be that I gave her the choice to go on a safer path, but because she was apparently of higher intellect than me, I simply agreed. Jack gives me a smile and heads off. Years later, my father would end up meeting that girl guide again, and her name was Abby. But nowadays, I simply call her Mom. Guys, what a love story that was, and I'll be honest, I never expected that ending. But with that said, what a well-deserved scare that Karen got. And I guess that's how they handled things back in the 80s and 90s, guys. Like, instead of giving her the, "Ma'am, we refuse to serve you, your money is no longer good here," Opie's dad decides to take her into the woods and gives her the scare of her life. A little backstory here. I'm a professional mechanic and have been for a little over 10 years. Now, being a mechanic, we've seen the spectrum of customers who get mad over something they did, bad parts and whatnot. But this story, even after 5 years, still makes me chuckle. It was a normal day when this lady drove her van in for a diagnosis. Think of an older looking Karen. Nothing unusual about her at first. She comes up, says her check engine light came on, and the car just does not want to move like it used to. As we write up the work order and everything, I get to work while she waits. Upon pulling the van in, I notice it's making noise. So I shut it down and plugged in my scanner to read the computers in the car for errors. A bunch of error codes pop up, and after looking over them, I see they all lead in the direction of timing issues. So I open the hood and go to pull the covers to expose the timing belt and check the condition. I had to take a few steps and let out a very audible "holy crap." With part of the cover off, I found half the belt missing, most likely disintegrated from age, and the other is literally about to break completely. I see a few strands left, holding the belt together. It's a miracle it even ran to get into my bay. Just an FYI, this particular engine is designed with tight tolerances, such as if the timing's too far off, it basically destroys the engine. The valves slam into the pistons, there's broken metal, banging, bad things that cost a lot of money. So we look it over, and we see that the vehicle is $30,000 past the recommended change for a timing belt. It's amazing the thing still runs. We inform Karen, and we bring her out to the shop to show her what we found. We try to explain it in as layman terms as possible. I inform her that it's a miracle it even drove in, and I highly recommend that she not drive it or even start the engine until after the belt's been replaced. We then go up front, and I go over a timing belt replacement package with her, cost of labors and parts, and she flat out goes, "No, I don't trust you people." I try to answer any questions she might have, but no, she's not having any of it. I then let her know that we'll price match any in town, and that I've already marked it down way below normal price to try to help her out. But again, no, she wants her car back. I suggest she tow it to where she wants, as it's not safe to drive, and that's when she flips on me. She screams at me, "I drove my car in, and I'm gonna drive it out. You can't stop me." That's when I go, "Okay," and I immediately have her sign a waiver that she understands what can happen and that we're not liable. By this point, we've reassembled the covers and we've pushed the van out to the parking lot. Again, I try to reason with her that it's a bad idea to run the engine. The belt replacement is only a few $100s versus $5,000 for a replacement engine. But she says, "No, I'm driving it." She almost refused to pay our diagnostic fee until I told her that I can hold the car indefinitely without payment. The whole time I'm trying to be nice, but by now, she's been screaming at me and my coworkers for 30 minutes, saying I'm holding her car hostage, and that I'm trying to sell her repairs that she knows she doesn't need, and that she'll call the cops. And as for the malicious compliance, I just hand her the keys, which she basically rips from my hands and storms out. We all kind of gathered to see if it would even start. We hear the engine crank, fire up, and then bam, followed by a stall. And we couldn't believe it. She attempted to start it again. This time, just the engine's free spinning with no compression, the belt broke, and the engine's been damaged. And I'm thinking, oh great, here goes the next hour of my life. Though I'm trying so hard not to laugh. The woman opens her door with enough force that I'm surprised it didn't break. She starts screaming, telling me that I sabotaged her car and that I have to fix it, or we owe her a new one. We informed her of her choices, saying we won't fix it for free or replace her car. That only made her turn a shade of red that I didn't think was possible. She went into a scream slash squeal slash yelling thing that I can't even explain. I can only make out a few words like lawyer, sue, cops, as well as every expletive in the book. She told me if we didn't fix it, she would call the police, corporate, managers, Yelp, the whole thing. We just said we warned her beforehand, but she didn't listen. This was her fault and hers only. She then starts screaming in the parking lot and we just went back inside, laughing with a few of the other customers who were waiting. They heard it all. About 10 minutes later, the police shows up, demanding to know what happened and how we destroyed her car. I go over it with them, away from her. We show them the photo evidence attached to the work order and the written release of liability she signed. Seeing that, the police agree with us. We watch them walk back to her, and seeing the grin slowly turn into disbelief was priceless. The van sat in our lot for almost a month, while she tried to get our management and corporation to pay for it, and they all denied it. We then got a few calls from her lawyers, who we then presented our evidence to, and they also said she had nothing. I think the best part of this entire ordeal is when she finally came to have it towed. We informed her that she owed us a lot of storage fees, at $15 a day after the 7th day of work completed. Cue the Velociraptor screeches. Wow, like all I can say is, she's really lucky her car didn't explode on the side of the road or something. And that's one of my biggest fears, guys. Timing belt just breaking and destroying the engine. But with that said, like, why would Karen not trust what OP has to say when she took her car to his shop in the first place? Like, what kind of answer was she expecting? Oh, all we had to do was replace this small loose pin, ma'am. That'll be $3. Like, that was the answer she was probably looking for. And this person says, wow, only $300 for storage? She got away lucky. Personally, I would have had her impounded, so that would be $300 per day. Yeah, some people are just too evil when it comes to messing with Karens, guys. And I don't know, like, after she called the cops, I think a lot of people would have done the same. Note: this story is sad, and I have sympathy for the victims, but I don't feel like the bad guy. It's 2 layers of compliance. Years ago, I lived in a very Hispanic neighborhood with a lot of young children. They were very loud and they screamed constantly during all hours of the day and night. Not just giggling play screams, but blood-curdling horror screams all the time. One day, I get a knock at my door and I see 2 blue-shirt police officers, 1 white guy and 1 Hispanic woman. They asked me if I've seen anything strange, like creepers, uncomfortable situations, etc. Things have been pretty normal, and I say as much. They then proceed to tell me that a little girl's missing and if I heard a scream or struggle. I let them know that the children scream every day and constantly, so I wouldn't have paid attention to any particular scream. And that's when the Hispanic officer loses it. She gets in my face about white racist males ignoring the plight of Hispanics, not caring about the neighborhood and community, and not calling the police when I heard children screaming. How dare I? So with that, I agreed to dial 911 at every child scream from that point on. Within 3 days, I had to have called 911 at least 15 times, each time explaining that it was relevant to case number so-and-so with Officer Hispanic Lady, saying that I should report a child screaming in the neighborhood. Eventually, I got a call from a superior officer about abusing 911. I agreed, and I was told to contact Hispanic officer directly with any other information regarding the investigation. Malicious compliance level 2. Now that I was authorized to call the Hispanic officer directly, day or night, when I had information regarding the investigation, I did. Every scream, she gets a phone call. If it's 2 in the morning and kids are screaming, guess who else gets to wake up? Morning, Officer Hispanic Lady. At 5 a.m., when parents are up for work and kids are screaming, you guessed it, another call to her. She tried to get me in trouble for harassing her, but I had a nice trail of documentation with 911 and her own superior to always keep her informed of screaming children. To help everyone feel a bit better, the little girl was found safely in another state. Yeah, so I bet that cop regrets her wording 100%, guys, after all those calls that OP made. And in my opinion, I don't think she handled things professionally at all. And a majority of people say that race should have never been brought into the situation. Also, a lot of people say that OP's a jerk for wasting police time. Let me know what you think in the comments below, guys. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled people episode. Go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.